Hey everybody, it's Michael Seiler from GotchaRocks.com, and today we're working on another bezel setting project. So I just wanted to go through the details, and we're just going to run through this video real quick. So I'll show you the ring. Here's the ring that I'm working on. It's a bezel, and I've done a little decorative design around there. And we're going to set this stone inside it. So right now it's cast, but it doesn't quite fit. So we're going to have to make some little modifications to the inside of the bezel, and we're going to hammer it over, and I'm going to take you step by step right through it. So let's get to it. Inside this ring there's a little extra metal just from the casting, and what I need to do is just grind this down a little bit, smooth it out so that my stone will slide into the mounting. And what I'm going to use to do that is this cylinder burr, and this is about a 6.5 millimeter cylinder burr, and it's just basically a cylinder, and we're going to use it like this. I'm holding the flex shaft handle like a pencil, and I'm going to get this going at a decent speed. Now I'm doing just a little bit at a time, so maybe like 4 to 6 millimeters at a time as you're going from one side of the inside of the bezel to the other. Just a little bit at a time. I'm not going like this, just a little bit. So I'm just going to keep working on this, and I'll let you know when I'm done. I've been working at this a little while, and I have this pretty well cleaned up in here, and I've positioned my stone so that I know which end goes where. So this side here goes on this side. So if I pick this up now, it slides right in there. So the next thing I need to do is actually trim this edge down so that I don't have a ton of metal coming over the stone when it's set. Here's a close-up of the ring, and I just want you to pay attention to right in here where you see all this metal that's sticking up. And we're going to need to trim that back. We don't need very much metal to hold this stone in, so we're going to have to trim this bezel down just a little bit. So I'll show you that in a second. I'm going to use this pair of dividers to measure the distance between the top of this metal or the bezel down to approximately where the stone starts to curve. And I want to just trim this down so that when I bend the metal over, it just catches a little bit of the curve of the top of the stone. So here's how I do that. I adjust the dividers. To approximately where I think the curve of the top of the stone stops. And so there we go. And then I'm going to do a small scribe, and this is just for me. I don't need to gouge it into the ring, just so I can see where I should stop. And this will become clear in a second. Just a light line around the edge. I know this is difficult to see, but I made a scribe that goes just along here, and I'll just kind of mark it in with a black magic marker so you can kind of get an idea of where the curve of the stone stops. So I have quite a bit of metal on top that could be trimmed down. Here's the black line. Right around here. And goes all the way around. And that's just a guideline so I can see what's happening. Okay. Next, I'm going to trim the top portion here down to the portion where we had measured. So about this like 2.5 millimeters is what we figured out. And I'm going to trim off this top portion, so the top will become thinner and taper down to the line. And I'm going to use a number 2 Barrett file. And this, the cutting length on this is about 6 inches, and the total length of the file is, I believe, 8. And then you have to get yourself a handle here. So this is how I do it. And so I'm just taking this edge down so it tapers to the top. Notice that when I'm filing, I'm rolling over the metal like this, as opposed to doing this. Nice long strokes to make a nice consistent cut. Here's a close-up of the ring after I filed it. You'll notice that you see this little edge right here. It goes from here to here, and that's that 2.5 millimeters I was talking about. And I've tapered that so it goes from thick at the bottom here to very thin at the top. And now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to trim this top portion down till it meets the appropriate length for the stone. The next step is to trim the top of this bezel down, and what I'm going to do is measure halfway between the file mark that we just made. So that 2.5 millimeters where we tapered it, I want to do half of that. So if my math is correct, that's 1.75. But we're just going to use our dividers and just eyeball it a little bit. So we're going to once again do a line all the way around. Okay, so that goes all the way around. And we're going to trim the top down to the line that we just made, so down to that 1.75. Now I'm going to do it in little increments. So I'll do maybe 1 millimeter, then I'll check it, put the stone in, and see if we have enough metal to pull it over the stone without it just completely covering the stone. So I just want a little bit of metal around here to grab the stone. So right now we just have a lot, so let's trim it down. I'm bracing it on the bench pen. And I'm filing nice long strokes, not little tiny ones. And I'll just keep going until I'm done. Alright, so I've filed it down about 1 millimeter. Let's check the stone. So it's fitting in there a little bit better. The bezel isn't sticking way up over the stone. So I'm going to take it down just a little bit more, but I'm going to really pay attention because this stone is not perfectly round because it was a found stone. So we're trying to keep most of the properties of the stone as it was found, as opposed to a stone you might order from, like, let's say Rio Grande or something like that, where it's perfectly oval. So there's high points and low points. So at this point I'm going to keep the stone in here, and I'm just going to start dressing the sides down so it meets the stone where it needs to. Keep in mind, you don't want to hit the stone with a file. So I'm being very careful to make sure that the stone doesn't jump out and hit the file. So keep that in mind. You don't want to run the file over your stone. I use this mostly just for fine tuning. That's looking better. I've filed down the top of the bezel so that it meets the stone, and I'm leaving inside here, it's about 1.5 millimeters, and I'm going to use that metal to fold over onto the stone. So this little edge will fold over here, and this little edge will fold over here, and we're just going to work our way all the way around. So that's what'll hold the stone in. That's how much metal I have around there, about 1.5 millimeters. This is a relatively large stone, as you can see, you know, compared to my finger. If you're using a smaller stone, then you're going to obviously use less metal coming up over the stone. The whole idea is you want to have the metal grab the stone at the crest, just like right here at as it starts to go up. The other thing that I want to point out is once I've filed this down, this top portion becomes a little bit thick, so you do have to go back through and change that angle. So you want to take that file and just take off this so it tapers once again from thick to very thin. One other really important tip, if you're working on these, make sure that you anneal your piece before you try setting your stone. If you don't, and the metal is work hardened, it's going to be very difficult to bend that over. So this is sterling silver that I'm working with. I've annealed it before I did anything that I showed you. So I annealed it, did the engraving, polished it, and then started to trim it down. So for setting our stone, we're going to need something that's going to hold it. And by hold it, I mean we need something that's going to hold it inside here. And that's where this is the GRS Benchmate. And let me show you how this works. They come with these little cylinders, and these little cylinders fit inside your ring. This one's just slightly too big, but just to show you what this cylinder looks like, that's what it looks like. And it gets fed onto this. So you put the cylinder here, like this, tighten it down slightly, put your ring in, give you a side angle, there you go. So you can see that this slides right in like this. Put the Allen wrench in and just start twisting until it tightens up. Slid a little bit, so let's readjust. Now I've got that tight enough that it's not going to move if I push on it. I'm not over tightening it so that I stretch out the ring or anything like that. So this is held like so. It rotates. So as I'm working, you know, on the bezel, working around here, I'll be able to just adjust it here and stay in one position. So these are absolutely fantastic. Best idea ever. One thing that I happened to notice once I had this set up is that there was a little bit of flash, a little metal flash inside here just from doing all the filing and stuff like that. And you can just take a piece of metal, I have this burnisher, and just kind of go like this, run it around the inside, and that'll just take off any of the little kind of pieces of metal. So often they look like little pieces of hair or something like that. So once you start setting, you don't want those getting stuck in your piece. Just go like that, clean it up. If you need to hit it with a little bit of sandpaper or something like that, just to clean it up, that's great as well. Our next step is to hammer the bezel down over the stone. So what we're going to use for that is this chasing tool, which is a nail that's been hammered down, and you can buy sets of these, and I'll put this in the tool list. Our other is a planishing hammer, and we're going to use this side. You can see that I use this one to do setting quite a bit, and it's kind of beat up. So don't use your brand new polished one that you use for other things to set stones. I'm going to start at this side, the far side, and I'm going to slowly start to bend the metal over. I'm not going to try to bend all the metal over at once. I'm just going to do a little bit at a time, and then I'm going to work around the bezel, okay? So using the planishing hammer, I'm going to strike it on the top, right here, and that will push the metal over. So here we go. Just a little bit, nice and easy. Keep working your way around. I've hammered over most of the bezel, and I just want to show you that there's still a little bit of this gap. So it's not hitting the stone yet, and that kind of goes all the way around. So once this is like kind of pushed over the stone, I'm going to have to work this edge right here closest to the stone and push it over, and so it's touching the stone. Now this is a little bit tricky, so you don't want to hit it really hard or anything like that. Just lightly tap on it until it starts to form to the stone. So the next step, I have all of the metal pushed down around the stone, and there's always going to be this little gap around here where it's not quite hitting the stone, and that's just fine. We're going to use this burnishing tool, which I made out of a nail and a dowel rod, and I have it, I basically hammered the nail in, cut off the top, rounded it, and polished it. And this is great for just doing the finishing work around the stone. Now I'm going to burnish just this edge of metal here, and I'm going to go all the way around. The thing is, you don't want to push onto the stone or it will scratch the stone, so it's going to take a little bit of practice. So I'm just going to work my way around, and I'm pulling this way towards the stone, I'm away from the stone onto the metal, so I'm trying not to hit the stone much at all. But you can see that it starts to clean that up. Gives it a nice clean line. And I'm barely pushing on it. And that's basically it. You just work your way all the way around until it hits the stone and gives it a nice crisp line there. The next step after you have the bezel hammered down is we need to clean this up. There's some hammer marks and scratch marks and things like that. What I'm going to use for that is this rubber wheel, and you can get these at Rio Grande. They are stone safe rubber wheels, and what I like to do is I buy the angle ones and then I dress them down. So they have ones that are angled and they have ones that are flat. I kind of flatten it out, and I'm using just an old Mizzy wheel like so. This will round it out just like that. That way when I put it on to the ring, it won't cut into it. So you want to have a medium speed, brace your thumb against the ring, and then pull towards you. So here we go. We're going to go around the bezel. And that looks pretty good. At this point I can polish this and it will be ready to go out the door for the most part. So I have the inside polished with our burnisher, which is this guy here. So this gave it a nice bright look. And the next thing I need to do is hit it with a little polishing wheel. So we're going to do that next. Now that we're ready for polishing, I'm using a wheel like this. So this is just a cotton wheel, and we're going to use some Zam, which I have a little bit of it right here, and this is a great polish for sterling silver, gold, and even platinum. This is how the wheel starts. This is one that I have worn down. So this is the one I'm going to actually use. So first I'm going to charge the wheel. So we have a little bit of the polishing compound down there, and that's called charging the wheel. As we did before, brace your thumb here, and you're going to pull towards you, medium speed. Look how nice that's polishing that up. Keep in mind that I'm trying to avoid the stone to some extent, and I'm just trying to polish the metal, not the stone. And that's as far as I'll take it today. And then I'm going to take this off and I'll do a polish on the rest of it, and I'll show you after it's done. And we're done. So I've done the polishing, and so everything around here, I hit it with the little wheel here, and then I hit the big portion with our larger polisher in the back. And so this is the ring that we ended up with. So I think it looks awesome. So the ring is completely covering the stone so that it's not going to wiggle or ever fall out without somebody actually taking it out. So